Here, in example 1, they're asking us for the zeros of a polynomial function. Now, our polynomial is being given as a graph, and whenever a graph is being given, our zeros are going to be located on the x-axis, which means that in our graph, we got 3 points that are touching the x-axis, which is -3, -1, and 2, which means that those 3 points are our zeros because they're touching the x-axis, which means that our correct solution is option 1. Now, in the following example, it is saying that a study compared the number of years of education a person received and that a person average yearly salary. It was determined that the relationship between these two quantities was linear and that the correlation coefficient, which is a keyword, correlation coefficient, was 0.91. Which conclusion can be made based on the findings of this study? Now, when we're speaking about correlation coefficient, the closer this number it is to 1 or -1, the stronger the relationship. The difference is that if it's the negative number, it's a negative relationship, and if it's a positive number, we have a positive relationship. 0.91 is pretty close to 1, which means that we have a strong relationship. So if we look at the 4 options, we can see that option 2 is the correct solution, since we said that there's a strong relationship since this number is close to 0.9, too close to 1. Now, in example 3, they're asking us to simplify the following. What is the value of 4x squared plus x to the second plus x to the negative 1/4 when x is 16? So what we're going to do is we're going to substitute. So we have 4, 16, 1/2 plus 16, 0 plus 16, negative 1/4. Now, before we move on, I want to review something here. Whenever you have any expression raised to the 1/2, you can rewrite this as the square root of x. In an exponent, your denominator, you can express it as a root. Also, 1/4, you can express it as the 4th root of x. And x to the negative 1/4, you can express it as 1 over the 4th root of x. Whenever your exponent is negative, you want to flip it and apply the second bullet point here. Now, let's come back to our example. So we have 4, 16 to the 1/2. According to this, we can rewrite it as the square root of 16. Oops. Plus any number raised to 0, it's always 1, plus 16 to the negative 1/4, and according to our third bullet point here, we can rewrite it as 1 over the 4th root of 16. So now we simplify. We have 4, square root of 16, which is 4, plus 1, plus 1 over the 4th root of 16 is 2. So now we have, finish the problem over here. So I have 16 plus 1 plus 1/2, which is the same as 17 plus 1/2, which is equal to 17 1/2, which means that our correct option is option 4. Now, in example 4, they're asking us to simplify the following. You gotta remember that any square root, you can bring it as a fractional exponent. which means that we can rewrite the following. We can rewrite this expression as the following. 81. Since we have a root of 4, we can rewrite everything on the inside as square 1 over 4. X 2 over 4 times y 5 over 4. Now, 81 exponent of 1/4, that is equal to 3. We're looking for the fourth root of x. So how do we get 3? 81 to the 1/4 is equal to the fourth root of 81, which we claim it to be 3. So we have 3 times 2 divided by 4 can be simplified as 1/2 times y 5/4 cannot be simplified. So now, if we look at our correct options, we can see that our correct option is example 1. Now, lastly, we're going to look at example 4, which means what is the exact value of cosecant? Now, before we move, we got to remember that cosecant of theta is the same as 1 over sine of theta, which means that cosecant of 120 is equal to 1 over the sine of 120. Now, how are we going to find the sine of 120? We're going to look at our unit circle. Here's our unit circle. We locate 120 right here. We got to remember that sine is the y value, which means that the sine of 120 is square root of 3 divided by 2, which means that we have 1 over square root of 3 divided by 2. Now this fraction, you can always rewrite a fractional denominator, as if you multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator, which means that this whole expression is the same as 1 times the reciprocal of the denominator, which is going to be 2 over square root of 3, which means that we have 2 over square root of 3. Now, none of the multiple choice options is what we have. So what we got to do is we got to rationalize the denominator. And to rationalize the denominator, we're going to multiply by the square root of 3 top and bottom. So now we're going to have 2 square root of 3 multiplied by square root of 3 remains 3. So now we see that our correct option is number 1.